Abraham Lincoln caught his elderly female maid stealing money from his desk drawer. And what happened next changed everything anyone thought they knew about power, mercy, and the true meaning of leadership in a moment that would define not just one life, but the very soul of a nation. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe to join the Ibrahim Traore family. The year was 1862, and the nation stood divided by war. Abraham Lincoln sat alone in his private study inside the executive mansion, the weight of countless decisions pressing down upon his shoulders. Outside his window, the capital city buzzed with tension and uncertainty. He had been awake for nearly 20 hours straight, reviewing military reports and signing documents that would send thousands of men into battle. His desk overflowed with papers, maps, and correspondence from generals who demanded more troops, more supplies, more time. Every decision felt like choosing between two impossible paths. Late that evening, Lincoln finally rose from his chair and walked toward the small cabinet where he kept his personal funds. The money was meant for emergency expenses, payments to informants, and discreet operations that could not go through official channels. He kept the sum carefully counted, knowing exactly how much should be there. But when he opened the drawer, his hand froze. Several bills were missing. He counted again, carefully, methodically. There was no mistake. Someone had taken money from his private desk. His mind raced through the possibilities of who had access to this room. Lincoln stepped back and surveyed his study with new eyes. The room suddenly felt different, violated. Trust, he had always believed, was the foundation of any relationship, whether between a leader and his people or between a man and those who served in his household. Now that trust had been broken, he sat back down, not at his desk, but in the chair by the fireplace. He did not call for guards. He did not raise an alarm. Instead, he thought carefully about who came and went from this private space. Only a handful of people had keys to enter when he was away. There was his male secretary, who handled official correspondence. There was the male security guard, who checked the room each night. And there was the elderly woman who cleaned his study every morning before dawn. She had worked in the mansion for decades, long before Lincoln arrived. Her name was Martha, and she was known throughout the household for her quiet dedication. She arrived before sunrise and left after sunset, moving through the halls like a shadow. Lincoln had spoken to her only a few times, brief exchanges of courtesy that revealed little about her life beyond these walls. The next morning, Lincoln arrived at his study earlier than usual. He positioned himself near the window, hidden partially by the heavy curtains, and waited. The sky outside slowly shifted from black to deep blue as dawn approached. He heard the soft click of a key in the lock. The door opened, and Martha entered, carrying her cleaning supplies. She moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had performed these same tasks thousands of times. Lincoln watched as she dusted the shelves, straightened the books, and swept the floor near his desk. Then she paused. Her eyes moved toward the cabinet where he kept his funds. Lincoln felt his heartbeat quicken as he watched her glance toward the door, checking if anyone might see. She set down her cleaning cloth and moved closer to the desk. Her hand trembled as she reached for the drawer. Lincoln could see the conflict playing across her features, the war between need and conscience. She opened the drawer slowly, carefully, as if the wood itself might cry out and reveal her actions. Her fingers touched the stack of bills. Lincoln stepped forward from his hiding place. Martha gasped and stumbled backward, her face draining of color. The money fell from her hand onto the floor between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. The evidence of her theft lay scattered at their feet like accusations made visible. Martha fell to her knees, not in plea, but in defeat. Her shoulders shook, though she made no sound. Lincoln had seen this same posture on battlefields. Soldiers who knew their end had come and had no strength left to fight it. He expected her to beg, to make excuses, to deny what he had witnessed with his own eyes. But she did neither. She simply knelt there, waiting for judgment. Lincoln picked up the fallen bills and counted them. This was not the first time she had taken money. The amount missing over the past weeks now made terrible sense. She had been stealing from him repeatedly, systematically, with careful calculation. Lincoln sat down in his chair and looked at the woman kneeling before him. Any other leader would have called the guards immediately. Theft from the president was not merely a crime, but a betrayal of the highest order. She would be arrested, tried, and imprisoned. Her name would become synonymous with disgrace. Instead, Lincoln asked a single question. Why? His voice was not angry, but genuinely curious, as if he were trying to solve a complex problem rather than condemn a criminal. Martha looked up at him, confusion mixing with her fear. She had expected rage, accusations, immediate punishment. She had not expected a question. She began to speak, her words coming slowly at first, then faster as the dam of her silence broke. She had a son who lived across the city. He had been injured in the war, sent home with wounds that would never fully heal. He could not work, could not provide for himself. She sent him money each week from her wages, but it was not enough. The medicine he needed cost more than she earned. She had watched him grow weaker, watched him suffer, and felt powerless to help. So she had made a choice, a terrible choice, driven by desperation that felt like drowning. Lincoln listened without interruption. He had heard countless stories of suffering since the war began. Mothers who had lost sons, fathers who had lost everything, families torn apart by conflict and hardship. But hearing it in this quiet room, from this woman who had violated his trust, struck him differently. He thought about the money she had taken. He thought about the son suffering across the city. He thought about the thousands of men suffering in field hospitals and camps. He thought about the nature of justice and whether it could exist separate from mercy. The answer that came to him was not what anyone would have expected. Lincoln stood and walked to his desk. He opened the drawer and removed not just the money Martha had tried to take, but 3 times that amount. He turned and placed it in her trembling hands. Her eyes went wide with shock and disbelief. She tried to pull away, to refuse, but he closed her fingers around the bills. He told her that the money was not a gift, but a loan, one she could repay when her circumstances improved. More importantly, he told her she would keep her position, keep her job, keep her dignity. But there was a condition, one she must accept without question or hesitation. She must never steal again, not from him or anyone else. She must face her struggles with honesty, must ask for help when she needed it rather than taking what was not hers. And she must visit his office once each month to report on her son's condition and her own progress toward repayment. Martha stared at the money in her hands as if it might vanish like smoke. She looked at Lincoln's face, searching for cruelty or mockery, some hidden trap in his mercy. But she found only sincerity. She tried to speak, to thank him, but words failed her completely. Lincoln helped her to her feet. He told her something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. He said that every person carried burdens invisible to others. He said that leadership meant understanding those burdens rather than adding to them. He said that mercy was not weakness, but the highest form of strength. He also told her something else, something that revealed the depth of his thinking. He explained that he could have had her arrested, could have made an example of her to deter others from similar actions. But what would that accomplish? It would destroy one desperate woman and help no one. Instead, by showing mercy, he gave her a chance to become better than her worst moment. He gave her son a chance to heal. And he gave everyone in the household a living example of what leadership could mean when guided by compassion rather than vengeance. The choice was not just about her, but about the kind of nation he hoped to build. Martha left his study that morning carrying more than money. She carried a second chance, an unexpected grace that defied every expectation of how power typically responds to transgression. Lincoln returned to his desk and his endless stack of documents, but something had shifted in how he viewed his role. News of what had happened spread quietly through the household staff. Nobody knew the full details, but they knew that Martha had not been dismissed, had not been punished in any visible way. They knew something extraordinary had occurred, something that challenged their understanding of how the world worked. In the weeks that followed, Lincoln noticed changes in how the staff interacted with him. There was a new warmth, a deeper respect that went beyond his title or position. They understood that he saw them not as servants, but as human beings worthy of dignity and second chances. That understanding created loyalty no amount of authority could command. Martha kept her promise. She never stole again. She visited Lincoln's office every month as instructed, bringing reports on her son's slow recovery. Lincoln listened to each update with genuine interest, sometimes offering advice or additional help when needed. The relationship between them transformed from employer and servant to something resembling mutual respect. Her son eventually recovered enough to find work. Martha began repaying the loan in small amounts, though Lincoln never pressed her when she fell behind. The repayment became less important than the principle it represented. The idea that mercy and accountability could coexist, that helping someone did not mean removing all consequences. Years later, after the war had ended and Lincoln's time in office had concluded, Martha still worked in the executive mansion. She had become known among the staff as someone who embodied quiet integrity. When new workers joined the household, she would tell them that respect must be earned through character, not demanded through position. She never told anyone the full story of what had happened that morning in Lincoln's study. Some secrets were too precious to share, too personal to become public knowledge. But those who knew her well could see that something profound had shaped her. Some encounter with grace that had changed the direction of her life. Lincoln himself rarely spoke of the incident, but it influenced how he approached countless other decisions, both small and large. He understood that leadership was not about catching people in their failures, but about helping them rise above those failures. He understood that mercy could be more powerful than punishment. The money Martha had tried to steal was nothing compared to the budgets he managed, the resources he commanded. But the choice he made that morning represented something far more valuable than currency. It represented a vision of justice that valued restoration over retribution, growth over condemnation, humanity over rigid law. Some advisors, had they known, would have called him foolish. They would have argued that showing mercy to a thief encouraged others to steal. But Lincoln understood something they did not. He understood that people responded not to the harshness of consequences, but to the sincerity of compassion. He understood that true change came from within, not from external force. The incident became a defining moment in his personal philosophy of leadership. When faced with difficult decisions about pardons, about mercy for soldiers who had deserted, about how to treat those who had opposed him, he often thought back to that morning with Martha. He asked himself what justice truly required versus what mercy made possible. His approach was not universally popular. Critics accused him of being too soft, too willing to forgive, too reluctant to punish. But those who worked closest to him, who saw how he treated everyone from generals to servants, understood that his mercy came from strength, not weakness. It took more courage to forgive than to condemn. Martha's son eventually started a small business, modest but successful enough to support himself and help his mother retire from her demanding work. On her last day at the mansion, she asked to speak with Lincoln one final time. He welcomed her into his study, the same room where years earlier she had knelt in shame and fear. She thanked him, not just for the money, but for something far more valuable. She thanked him for seeing her as a complete person rather than just her worst action. She thanked him for believing she could be better, even when she had not believed it herself. She thanked him for teaching her that mercy was not permission to fail, but an invitation to rise. Lincoln told her that she had taught him something equally important. She had taught him that behind every action, even shameful ones, lay a human story worth understanding. She had taught him that quick judgment often missed deeper truths. She had taught him that the measure of leadership was not power, but wisdom and how that power was used. They parted with mutual respect to people from completely different worlds who had shaped each other in unexpected ways. Martha left the mansion for the last time, carrying with her not just wages earned, but dignity restored. Lincoln returned to his work, carrying with him renewed conviction about the kind of leader he wanted to be. The story of what happened that morning lived on in whispers and speculation. Some versions got the details wrong. Some added elements that never occurred. But the core truth remained, a truth about the transformative power of mercy, about leadership that elevated rather than crushed, about second chances that changed lives. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.